Hello, and welcome to this Leo full moon forecast. We have got quite strange weather at the moment. It's summer, and we've had two of the hottest, craziest days. And then today it's a bit cooler, and it's just started to drizzle, but the sun is shining. And in South Africa, we call that a monkey's wedding. I don't know if it's the same everywhere in the world, but just felt like a little blessing to have a little monkey's wedding as we're beginning to film this video of the Leo full moon. So let me share my screen of the chart, and I'm using the free app AstroSeek to do these readings. I've mentioned it before, but just in case. 25th of January 2024 is the full moon in Leo. As you can see, I've set this for my area in South Africa, and so where you see the signs in whatever houses is not necessarily applicable to you, depending where in the world you live. If that's important to you, depending on what you know about astrology and how detailed you want to be, then you can go and draw up your own chart for your part of the world. And to do that is quite simple. You will just, okay, wait, here is the lunation cycle app. I have got a video on this, so you can check it out if you go find it on my YouTube channel if you're interested. But you can put in the time zone when you go to the moon section of this. Here, moon phase calendar, and then you can go and put in the time zone. And also what I'm looking at here is the monthly lunation cycle. But let's go back to the chart. So, and if you do that, sometimes it's quite pertinent and interesting for you. For example, where I am in the world and setting up the chart, it's given it a 15-degree Leo rising, this chart, for my part of the world. So bear in mind, this is not for everyone. I just wanted to use it as an opportunity to say, I am literally 15 degrees Leo rising, my own chart. Now, most of the lunation forecasts, the mundane charts that I do for these forecasts do not land on my exact rising sign, but this one happens to. So I know that it's going to have a particular potency for me on that level at least. So when you start to look at these things, you start to take them into your own chart. And what I always say to you is, don't worry where Leo is on this chart. Go look at where Leo is in your chart. So if you have done a copy of your chart, or you've ever had your chart read and you have a copy of your chart, let's say you have Leo in the 6th house, you're going to say, okay, so this full moon is happening at 5 degrees of Leo. See, 5 degrees. Let's just blow that up. 5 degrees of Leo in my, as our example would be, 6th house. So what is 6th house? What does that mean? Do I have planets there? Do I have points there? That kind of thing is how you would personalize this a bit more for yourself. But in the end, the energy of a full moon, which we're looking at now, is the energy of the full moon. It is a collective energy for all of us. I often think when I gaze up at the stars or gaze up at the moon that we're all underneath this exact same full moon, or whatever it is that I'm witnessing at that moment. And that is definitely something to remember. So this full moon, it doesn't matter where in the world you are. We're all underneath this full moon, and the energetics of this full moon are what they are. So if a baby were born at this full moon in Leo, this would be that baby's birth chart. But because we all have already been born, we have our birth chart, we look at what's happening right now, this moment in time, this fictitious birth chart of this full moon, and we go, well, what are the energies there? And that can be enough. So astrology, there's always another level and there's always another layer, and it's best to meet yourself where you are so as not to be overwhelmed. So just looking at this energy of this full moon may be just enough. You get your nuggets and you use them for the month or for whatever insights you need for the day, whatever it is. If you're getting a little bit more involved in your astrology and you're starting to understand your own natal placements, let's say you have a moon in Leo, then obviously this is going to be a big lunation for you, because this is your one full moon of the year. We only get one full moon in our moon sign per year normally, and one new moon per year normally. There are going to be 2 full moons in Capricorn this year, I believe, but that's less common. So this will be a big deal if you're a new moon, if you're a Leo moon baby. So then you can start to look at it and apply it to your chart. If there's something going on with a lot of planets, where you have a lot of planets, or where you have a strong elemental thing, let's say this is a fire moon and you hold a lot of fire in your chart, or this is a fixed sign moon and you're a very fixed person. If this doesn't make sense to you, you're just not ready to take it to that level, and that is a-okay. Just go where you go. But if you do understand what I'm saying, then that becomes important as how you bring it into your life. If you're a fixed sign, this is going to be a strong moon for you for numerous reasons. So remember that fixed sign energy is kind of stubborn, fixates, gets stuck in. It's of all the cardinal, fixed, and mutable, all the modalities, fixed is the one that doesn't want to change. I mean, it's all there in the name, right? We resist. So, for example, for me, I have quite an even mix of mutable, fixed, and cardinal, but I have a fixed rising sign. I'm Leo rising, as I already mentioned. So this is where to look at the places that are going to be triggered in, for example, my chart. My fixed placements are going to be more impacted and triggered in this particular lunation because it's a fixed full moon. So you might start to ask yourself where you're not willing to change. And this is really powerful because, and everybody's been talking about it, if you listen to any astrology or even vaguely influential things, vaguely influenced by astrology, you will have heard about Pluto's shift into Aquarius. Here's Pluto at 0 degrees and 9 minutes of Aquarius by the time we hit this full moon. And he actually entered into Aquarius with the sun very shortly after the sun. So the sun is opposite the moon at full moon always, every month. That's why we see the moon. She is able to fully reflect the light of the sun, not like when we see what looks like a half moon, or we call the quarter moon phases. She is at 90 degrees from the sun and she can only reflect half of his light. When she's new, when she's with the sun, she reflects none of his light. When she's full, opposite the sun, she reflects all of his light. That's why we see her. She herself does not hold light. She reflects the light of the sun. So always full moon is sun opposite moon. So you can see the moon is at 5 degrees of Leo. The opposite sign of Leo is Aquarius. That means the sun must be at 5 degrees of Aquarius. And just a few days before, the sun entered the sign for the first time with Pluto. So the sun moves 1 degree a day. For those of you who want to know that, it's not that important, but, well, it's important, but maybe not for you where you're at. But the sun moves 1 degree a day. So by now it's taken him 5 to 6 days to get away this distance from Pluto. And we might start to kind of feel like it's a bit of a relief that we're moving away, but Pluto's influence is still strongly there. Early Aquarius with the sun, early Aquarius, opposite the moon, early opposite sign of Leo. Now, the dynamic of Leo and Aquarius is, I would always say, queen and queendom, or king and kingdom, or me as the figurehead versus us, the community, or me, the queen bee versus the hive mind. Those are all kinds of different ways that you can, and pick the one that resonates. I'm a Gemini. I pick a lot because they all resonate. But for you, it may be more like one of those just hit the mark for you. And then you can feel into, what does that mean? How do I, Leo, have an open heart, sit there on my throne, having this kind of power and control to affect change in the community? But I can only do that to the extent that I'm doing me well. So if I am a good queen, if I am a benevolent queen, if I am honoring my own needs, if I am not running myself ragged or dry, if I am finding joy and happiness and honesty in my relationships and authenticity in my emotions and all of those things, then I will be a better person with that. I can take my goodness, can take my optimism, can take my hope, can take my big old beating heart into the community, Aquarius. If I don't look after me, Leo, I am going to be of less use and effectiveness in the community. If I allow myself to become resentful, if I shut my heart down because it's been hurt, if I if I allow myself to be bitter and twisted and not believe that there is joy and pleasure in the world because of all the darkness that I'm seeing, then I might take my bitterness into the community. Then I might become a punitive queen, that kind of thing. So I really, really feel like the lessons of Leo are so important. I mean, okay, let's be honest. As I said, I'm a Leo rising, so it's a personal strong point for me. But in fact, because of that, because of it being experientially something I can really resonate with, I feel like I actually can stand on my Leo soapbox and say that, because it is a part of my learning and my lessons in this lifetime. So once I learn that lesson, I can be that good queen, so to speak. But the thing is here that we do also have a T-square in the sky. So a T-square is where you have these two are opposite each other, 180 degrees. And then at the 90 degrees from either of those sides, we have Jupiter. So this is an even more dynamic full moon because Jupiter is wanting to make this bigger. Now, coming to the idea of being a benevolent king or queen or leader, and remember, you're always the leader of you. Most of us are not really kings and queens, but we are the king of our own castle or the queen of our own castle. And we therefore have choice about how we choose to be in the world. And that's really important. It's really powerful because really we're not in control of much more than that we are in control of, but we're in control of how we digest, metabolize, take in, and give out. And the more actively we are aware and conscious of these things, the more control we have over whether we spread our toxin into the world, and we all have it. None of us is immune to the shadow, the darkness, the toxicity. We all have it. But the more clear we get with ourselves, the more real, Leo, and authentic we get. Yes, I can be X, Y, and Z, but that also means that I can be ABC. So let's get real with ourselves. Let's get honest with ourselves. Now, speaking, as I said, of the benevolent ruler, Jupiter is jubilant and benevolent and gregarious and larger than life. And really, Jupiter was the kind of, well, Zeus, who Jupiter represents, is the kind of overarching, the main god of the pantheon in Roman and Greek mythology. So with that in mind, we can feel that there is this dynamic push and pull and pressure to develop self in order to hold space for other. That feels like really kind of almost like the overarching theme for me of this whole lunation. And one of the other reasons that this is really important is that you can see how heavily loaded this area of the chart is and how sparse this area of the chart is. I mean, this is Lilith. We're not that we're negating Lilith. I love Black Moon Lilith, but it's a point, not a planet, and it is not something that I really get into in these readings. So we're going to kind of imagine that this wasn't here. And then the nodes, which we'll speak to. So the south node is in this spot. The north node is loaded. But the rest of the side of the chart is pretty empty. And this is actually going to be what we're going to see for the beginning half of this year. It's going to be really heavy in this part of the chart, and then it's going to open out. The planets will open out. So at the moment of this full moon, we have Venus has just entered Capricorn. Mercury and Mars are still in Capricorn. They're about to have a new beginning, a conjunction, a new beginning to their next cycle together, which will be about a 2-year cycle. So they only meet up about every 2 years, and whenever planets meet up with each other, they start a new cycle. So it's kind of like the beginning of a school year. And I use that analogy because I'm at the beginning of a school year with my kids. So every year we get to that point and we start a new year and the journey begins. And when we get to the end of that year, they finish a grade and then we begin a new year and they begin a new grade. And so we go. We can kind of think about it like that when planets meet. They have different meeting times. They don't meet up. Some planets only meet up every 20 years. It's like not, and even longer. It's not always the same, but in the case of these two who are about to have their meeting, it's going to be for about 2 years. So that's always a big point. They're all in Capricorn. They're all personal planets. Personal planets meaning more our personality, more within our control. Check out my weekly card reading because I do touch in on that a little bit as well. But yes, so these personal planets are all in the sign of Capricorn, where Pluto just spent 15 years and the sun has just finished his annual visit in Capricorn. And it's a building energy. So now that we've had this like real shake up, Pluto's moved into Aquarius. It's like shaken the entire world. We don't know how we think. We don't know how we feel. Everything feels we're a bit disillusioned in order to build the new ideal. And here we have these little personal planets. Mars, who's like, this is how I get what I want. Mercury, this is how I'm going to think about this. And Venus, it's very important to manage the finances and build what we love. They're all there building like little sea goats, really trying hard to get things back on track. This is where you in your personal life might be like scurrying to fix the problems and to find stability and structure in your life at this full moon. And then we have obviously we've already spoken about those two in Aquarius, and then we have the Pisces big planets. Saturn is really involved here, so we're going to touch back in on Saturn in a moment, and Neptune, who are on either side of the sign of Pisces. And Pisces is the ideal. Pisces is this beautiful new idealistic mystical dreamer that can be illusional and delusional on the other side of it. Now, Neptune this is Neptune's last full year in this sign, and Neptune is not quite as slow as Pluto, but pretty damn slow. So this is also quite a big deal for us as we excavate with Neptune's lens the last few degrees of Pisces before he steps into a really big new beginning next year in Aries, which is the whole beginning of the new zodiacal cycle, because the cycle begins in Aries, right? But that'll come up a lot more later in the year towards next year. But in the meantime, Saturn, I want you to notice Saturn's degree. He's at 5 degrees. What degree is the sun at? 5 degrees. The moon at 5 degrees. And Jupiter is 6 degrees. So close enough to 5 degrees. We might even say that Venus is in play here, but we're going to leave Venus out just to not get too complicated. And we're going to talk about the fact that if these two signs are opposite each other, we have aspects that's in astrology are how planets see each other. If I'm opposite you, I can see you. If I'm 90 degrees from you, I can see you. If I'm 120 or 60 degrees from you, I can see you. These are the more kind of common aspects. They're called Ptolemaic aspects in astrology. But there are other places where we kind of call non-aspects. And I don't really think there's such a thing as a non-aspect personally, because I think that everything is influencing. Just because I cannot see my appendix or my gallbladder in my stomach with my eyes doesn't mean I don't have an appendix or a gallbladder or a liver. They're in there. I just can't see them. And that's what, for me, a birth chart is really just like the combination of a whole. I can see my hand, but I can't see my liver. I know it's in there. I can't check it for any discomforts, or maybe, see if it's looking bloated. I can do that with my hand. If my rings don't fit or whatever, I can say, oh, I've scratched my hand, or oh, my hands are dry, I can put cream on them. I can't do that with my liver. So this is kind of, for me, like those invisible spaces or non-aspects, they're still very much part of the whole organism of of your natal chart, your birth chart. But two of the places where we would consider non-aspects or invisible would be the 150-degree angle, which is called a quincunx. And in this case, that's where Saturn is from the moon. So it's not in the sign opposite. It's in one of the signs on either side. Okay? That's 150 degrees. That is an uncomfortable space because it's a blind spot. It's like that thing in your peripheral vision where you think you see something, and as you turn, it still stays in that blind spot and you cannot see it. But you're pretty damn sure there's something there, and it's very irritating. So quincunx aspects are not the easiest. Now, Saturn is in a sign that says we need to structure the dream. Now, dreams are, think about a nighttime dream. They're a little bit elusive. And they're not always very easy to structure, but Saturn really wants to structure and build it. And unfortunately, in Pisces, it can be a little bit hard for us to kind of get clarity on what that looks like. It's forming, but it's not coming into form. And Saturn wants things to come into form, to crystallize. So Saturn is already a little uncomfortable there, and we've spoken about this in the past. But now, at this full moon, let's imagine as the moon, you're sitting on your throne and thinking, what do I do for everyone? And you're looking across at the sun, who is the people. With Aquarius, the sun is shining a light on the people. What do the people need? How am I going to be a good queen or king? How do I do what is best for the people? And there's this irritating little sort of knowing that there is something super important that needs to be crystallized and structured and condensed into form, but you can't quite see it. You can't quite reach it. Meanwhile, you've got all these personal planets in Capricorn trying to do the work. Just tell us what to do and we'll build it, but you can't quite grasp it. So you can feel like that's annoying. That is frustrating. That is like, I want to do it. I want to do it now, but I don't know how because it's not fully formed yet as an idea. So this is tricky. This is not super comfortable. What is nice here is that as much as Jupiter is causing a little bit of pressure to these two to do the big thing that needs doing, get that thing done. And they're like, but we don't know what it is yet. We don't know how. So he's kind of applying the pressure here, but he is supporting Saturn. So, and Jupiter is the ruler of Saturn because Jupiter is the ruler of Pisces. So Jupiter is, or the traditional ruler. So Jupiter is supporting Saturn to say, it's okay. Let's dream big and structure big. Let's bring it into form. I've got your back. We're going to do this together. So Jupiter's trying to help a little bit with that there. And Venus in Capricorn is actually ruling the Jupiter. So she's also like, let's just build a thing. Let's do something constructive. I'm so tired of all this wishy-washy. Let's be constructive. Okay, then the other thing I want to mention, I don't want to let this get too long, and you know how I can get carried away when I start speaking astrology. So the other thing that's really interesting is that the nodes that move backwards, the nodes are almost coming to meet Chiron. Now, nodes are exactly opposite each other, just like sun and moon. So we would say 19 degrees of Aries. What's opposite that is 19 degrees of Libra. North node, south node is where we're coming from. North node is where we're moving to. Or south node is where we have a lot of experience, karmic understanding, lessons from lifetimes. And North node is where we want to cultivate. So right now we are really trying to cultivate ourselves because North node is in the sign of Aries, the me sign. And of course, this is going to link into this 15 degrees here. See 15, 15. So you always want to look at the same degrees in different signs and see how they're relating to each other. So this is a sign of how am I going to be the best, strongest, most stable and honest and open and authentic version of myself. And this is, I'm a warrior, I'm a pioneer, I'm a leader, I need to lead. You can see fire brings in a lot of I, me, mine. When you speak fire and when you have strong fire, you'll see that you use those kinds of words a lot. It's not necessarily selfish and self-centered, but it can be. But sometimes it's just the way that fire is. Fire, because fire just is. Fire doesn't think like, am I too hot? Am I too cold? Am I smoking? Fire's like fire. Just is. So that is very, very, very strong here with the nodes right with Chiron, which is the wound. So it's my wound about being my true self, my wound about being competitive, that's an Aries word, or pioneering, or hot-headed, or any of those fire things, my wound around that. If I am that, will I be loved less? Will I be deemed unworthy? Where are your shadow traits around being loud, being gregarious, being fiery, being intense, being too much? Where are your wounds around that? Because that is somewhere where you could really work on right now. And then, as I say, like the 15-degree rising sign also means that we have the 15-degree in this chart. But remember, that's not true for all of you, okay? But I'm just giving it as an example for this one. The rising, the ascendant and descendant isn't true for all of you. However, this is absolutely happening, okay? Now, the other thing to mention is you can see that here we have 19 degrees of Taurus. That is an irritated semi-sextile. So just like the 150-degree quincunx is blind spotty, this is blind spotty. So this is also a bit like you're too close for comfort now. I absolutely know you're just through the wall in the other room. I know you're there. I can basically hear you snoring, but I can't get through to you. And we think very differently because signs next to each other, cardinal fire, fixed earth, very different energies. Okay, so the Uranus is and actually it's quincunx, the south node, and semisextile, the north node. So that's not super comfortable. And squaring, these guys, especially Chiron, are squaring, strong square to Mars and also to Mercury. So again, my wound around, am I good enough to build the new thing? What if I work so hard and nobody appreciates me? Nobody sees what I'm doing. Am I working hard enough? Those kind of things you might start asking yourself in this. It might bring up your worth issues because a wound in Aries is me. So I might take things personally. And how do I get practical, Capricorn, because this is squaring? How do I practically stop this loop of I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy, people won't love me if, people will walk away from me if, like, start to look at those kinds of narratives in your life. I think they would be very powerful. So as much as this is square, the Capricorn here is square to the Aries here, and this is a semi-sextile, icky, squicky, not very happy. The Uranus is also trine, and that's like more comfortable. Uranus is supporting. It's almost like Uranus creates the shock, but in a way where he knows these guys are ready to rebuild. I'm going to burn down the tower, and I'm thinking of the tower card in the tarot. Watch this week's weekly reading. I'm going to burn it down, but I know that you are poised and practical and ready and able to fix it better than before. So that's kind of like the support that's coming from Uranus to the Capricorn planets, especially Mars and even Mercury, less so Venus, but nonetheless, by sign, trine by sign, they're very engaged. And Jupiter is more supportive of Venus. So all of these Capricorn planets have support from bigger energies in a very stable Taurian kind of way. Let's think about how that tastes, how that smells, how that looks, how that feels. Build it. Okay, I'm going to stop there because I think I'm getting long as I do. So thank you very much for watching. Check the links below if you want personal readings, or please, I love your likes, shares, comments, subscribes, help me to grow my reach so I can share these things with more people. That is very much part of my personal journey, and I thank you for your time. Have a beautiful full moon and good luck.